Hi everyone. In today's session, we'll be dealing with the concept of risks and consequences in cloud computing. As you all are aware that whenever you are uploading some data into a cloud environment, we are uploading it into a public cloud. As you all know, we are having three different types of clouds. That is public cloud, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. So there are less chances of risk whenever the data is uploaded into a private cloud. But whenever you are uploading the data into a public cloud, there are certain sort of risks and also consequences that we may be facing. So in today's session, we'll be discussing about the risks and also the consequences in cloud computing. The first type of risk that we'll be talking about is risk of vendor lock-in. So here, a vendor is nothing but whoever the public cloud vendor is there. That is, say, for example, like AWS or else Microsoft Azure or else Google Cloud. Whatever the public cloud domains that are available in the market, everyone will be calling them as a vendor. So, whenever you are uploading some data into a particular public cloud, there should not be any vendor lock-in. That is, we may have a chance of vendor lock-in. So, what does a vendor lock-in means is that whenever you are uploading some data into a cloud, it is not accessible or else it cannot be downloaded and uploaded into some other cloud. That is what we call it as a vendor lock-in. That is, they'll be locking us and they'll be restricting us that our data will be accessed only by using their particular cloud environment. That is what we call it as an vendor lock-in. So here we can talk about three different types of delivery models. That is, one is infrastructure as a service. So whenever you are talking about infrastructure as a service, whenever you take a particular service like us from a public vendor, then what happens is that there are chances that our data may get locked into that particular cloud environment. So before, in order to avoid such a vendor lock-in, what we need to do is that we need to test for the backup of the virtual machines along with the OS and whatever the data that you are uploading into the virtual machine, everything has to be backed and everything can be downloadable and it can be uploaded into some other cloud. And whenever you are talking about platform as a service, first of all, you have to choose whatever the platform that is there in the public vendor with the public vendor, that particular platform has to be chosen very much wisely. Why we are saying wisely is that we have to check whether the same platform is available with the other clouds or not. If the platform is not available with the other clouds, then what happens is that we are restricted to use only that particular cloud. So that is why we have to check that whatever the platform that you are choosing, it is available in other clouds or not. And whenever you are using the APIs, you have to use the standard APIs. You should not use the APIs which are being uploaded by the cloud environment. So here what should happen is that you have to choose the APIs which are standard and which can be used globally. If you come across with the concept of software as a service, then what happens is that you have to look after whether whatever the data that is uploaded into the cloud, whether it can be downloadable in any sort of format like a PDF or else some sort of like an Excel or any sort of format. Because if the data is stuck up with them and we want to migrate to some other cloud, then we'll be left with no user data. So that is why whenever you're using software as a service, you have to make sure that the data is downloadable and it can be uploaded in other clouds also. So in order to avoid all this particular vendor lock-in, what we suggest is that you need to have an SLA, which we call it as a service level agreement between you and the cloud vendor. That these are the conditions. These are the things that are to be done if I should take an account or else if I should upload some data into a cloud environment. That is the understanding or else the service level agreement that we make with the cloud vendor, whoever is there. And using that SLA, we can avoid the concept of vendor lock. The next type of risk we'll be talking about is risk of loss of control. So here, risk of loss of control means, see, whatever the resources that are being handled by the cloud environment. Say, for example, networks, security, hardware, and whatever the firewalls that they are using, whatever the data center that they are using, everything is controlled by the cloud vendor. We are not in any way involved in controlling any of the things. Say, for example, if you are uploading some file into a drive, what control do you have over the file? Do you know where actually the data is being stored? We do not have any information. Do you know what the firewall that they are using? No, we do not have any sort of information. Can we say what is the type of network that we are using? We are not supposed to know any sort of information whenever you're uploading the data into a cloud environment. All the control over the data will be in the hands of the vendor because everything will be maintained by them. And here we may get a problem whenever you are not having a proper service level agreement. As we said earlier, there should be an agreement between the user and also the cloud vendor whenever you are migrating some data into the cloud environment. And here, if the SLA is not relevant, then obviously what happens is that we may face certain sort of problems with the cloud vendor. And here we are having two different types of requirements for the vendor and also the customer. See, from the vendor point of view, what will be the requirements is that a user has to come into our cloud, they have to create an account, they have to migrate their data, and from the customer point of view, we expect 100% uptime without any sort of failures and everything. So that should be done over there. And here we may also lose control of our data because some of the resources or else some of the services from the cloud vendor they may be outsourced. So as outsourcing itself means some third parties involved over there. So obviously we lose the control of on whatever the data that you are uploading into the cloud. So that is one of the risks that you have to keep in mind whenever you are uploading some sort of data into a cloud environment. Next, we'll be talking about risk of resource scarcity or poor provisioning. Here, the point itself will be saying risk of resource scarcity. So, what are resources under a particular cloud environment? Whatever the computational capacities that we need at any particular point of time, that is what we call it as a resource. If you are using a cloud environment, say for example, like for storing some sort of files, there the storage capacity will be acting as a resource. If you are creating a virtual machine, then whatever the RAMs, whatever the processors, or else whatever the operating systems that you are using there, everything will be considered as a resource. What if a resource scarcity happens? Say, for example, if a startup has started with a limited number of resources, then what happens? They may be inviting some customers, or else they are offering the services to publicly by using a public cloud. And if the number of customers increases, and if all of them requires the same resource, then what happens? They run out of resources, right? So here what happens is that whenever you are talking about something like a cloud environment, multiple users will be competing for a fixed set of servers, bandwidth, or also storage resources. So whenever competing happens, we should have enough resources to satisfy the needs of the customer. Whatever the client or else the customer needs the resources at a particular period of time, then what should happen is that we should be able to provide all the required resources from them for them. Here, we do not know that the cloud provider may have used lesser resources. We are not guaranteed that we are having enough amount of resources to serve our needs. Or else there are conditions that the algorithm may not work properly for allocation of the resources, or else the resources may be not available at that particular point of time. So that is also one of the problem. Before you choose a cloud, we have to be very much careful that we do not run out of the resources. If you take the example of the giant in the cloud environment like AWS or else Google, they do not say that we are not having enough resources. They make an assumption or they create an assumption to us that they are having like unlimited resources. What they do is that they are maintaining enough infrastructure to serve the needs of whoever the clients that are creating an account with them. So before choosing a cloud, you have to be very much cautious that they are having enough resources and we do not run out of resources whenever it is needed. The next type of risk we'll be talking about is multi-tenant environment. Whenever you're talking about multi-tenancy, it is nothing but see, the public clouds, whatever they're there, all will be running on the concept of multi-tenants. That is, the members all over the world will be using the same resource. Say, for example, I'm having a Gmail account. My wherever the storage my account is stored, in the same storage there will be some billions of people from all over the world. They may be from other continents, or else they may be from other countries, or else they may be from other states. We all are using the same resources. Whenever you are using the resources, same resource, there are certain sort of risks that we may be facing. So here, multiple users may be using the same resource. That is one of the concept. So here, a tenant, what they can do is that they can access our data, or else they can copy the data, because we are having the privilege of using the same resource. The person behind me may be able to access my data also. That is also one of the risks. There may be some sort of unauthorized access of data because we are using the same resource. Has So it may be a serious threat to the user's privacy, because the utilization of the same resource may lead to some sort of risk. That is one of the risks we'll be talking about in cloud environment. Next, we'll be talking about risk of failure of the cloud vendor. That is, if you are choosing a cloud which is having some sort of less charges when compared to the James, and if you had gone to a new cloud which is into the market, the risk that we may be facing is we may go out of the business. The vendor may go out of the business. He may shut the cloud at a night, and morning we will not be having any access to whatever the data that we had uploaded into the cloud. They may go out of the business, because once we are uploading a data into the cloud, it is not in our hands. It is completely, we'll be losing the control over the data. And if they are closing their cloud for any sort of reason, that may be a risk for us. In this competitive technology, the company may not sustain, because they need to keep updated from day to day in order to sustain in the market. We cannot predict that they'll be in the market forever. So that will be also a risk. And if they are providing some low quality of service, whatever the services that you had expected, if they are not providing certain sort of services, then what we can do? Because you are already uploaded, or else you had already migrated all your data into the cloud environment. That will also be a serious risk for us. So that is one of the thing we'll be talking about. Next, we'll be talking about the inadequate SLA. If the service level agreement is not properly documented, then what are the problems that we may face? So an SLA is nothing but what it does is that it will be having an agreement between the customer and also the vendor, that what is the service that we expect from them, what is the performance that they are having, and what is the security that they are providing. Everything will be documented in the service level agreement, and the service level agreement is documented such that it has all the user requirements, and also it has all the promises that the vendor will be doing to this particular user. So using this SLA, we can settle many disputes. If there is any sort of problem with the services which they are providing, or else if they are not able to fulfill whatever the services which they had promised to offer us, so everything can be settled by using these SLAs. And say, for example, this particular cloud vendor, or as this particular cloud environment has been acquired by some other by some other competitor, or else by some other company, then what happens to the SLA? We can show that new company that yes, these are the services that the previous company has promised us, and you should bind to these particular services, and you have to do it. That is what we can do. So if we are not having a proper SLA, then obviously it is us who are going to face a major problem. Next type of risk we'll be talking about is risk of malware and also internet attacks. Malwares, as you all know, there are a lot of types of malwares that are coming into the internet nowadays. Even a novice who is not having much knowledge on on the attack, cyber attacks and everything, they may get a malware downloaded free of cost from the internet, and they can just launch an attack on the on our cloud, because anyone can open an account in a cloud. If any client who is having either a debit card or else a credit card, they are having access to open an account in a cloud. We cannot predict what type of user they are. They may be some malicious users, they may be normal users, or else they may be users who are using for development. We cannot predict on what basis or else on what purpose they are creating this particular account. And they may launch these distributed denial of service attacks. That is, there may be not available there may be non-availability of the resource at that particular point of time, or else they may launch some EDOS attacks. That is, they'll be drastically increasing the resource prices so that the user will not be able to access the resource. So such type of attacks may be launched as it is a public cloud environment. And if the management of the cloud resources is not managed carefully, then what happens is that user authentication may be faulty. That is, the usernames and also passwords can be exposed. They can be exploited. They can be hacked. And sometimes what happens is that if you're not monitoring your network, then the attackers will be launching the viruses, and your bandwidth will be consumed by those particular viruses, and the bandwidth will not be available to your actual customers. And the storage or else the servers can be encrypted. They may be locked. As you all know, a few years back there was a malware attack, WannaCry. What it has done, it has encrypted all the data on our hard disks, and we need to pay to the hackers in order to get our data back up. So a user may lock the storage and also the data that is available. That is also one of the risks that we may be facing. Next, we'll be talking about network outages. Say, for example, at the vendor side, the network goes off. The network is not available. There is some sort of problem with the routers. There is some sort of a problem with the network providers. Then what happens? Whatever the changes that the customers are doing, they cannot be accessed. As the cloud is not available, we may lose our change. We may lose our business. It may cost in loss of some millions of dollars. And if you are having some services from other clouds, even the particular coordination will also be missed over there. That may happen. That is also one of the risks. And risk in physical infrastructure. So there may be theft in equipment. As we are uploading the data into the cloud, we already said we lose all the control. It is nothing in our hands. Say, for example, whatever the hard disk or else whatever the rack in which your data is saved, if it is thefted, then what we can do? There is nothing we can do. Some employees may be having some privileged access. There may be some sort of malicious employees over there. We do not know what they are doing with our data. They may scan the data, or else they may transfer our data to some pen drives and take our data outside of the cloud. Anything may happen. If there is some sort of power outage, that can also be a problem. And if there is no proper backup for the power over there, and if the power goes off, then obviously our cloud is becomes inaccessible. And if there are some sort of some thousand rows, sorry, thousand racks that are placed in a particular room, and they'll be generating a lot of heat, and say for example the air cons goes off, then obviously it will be an increase in the system's temperature, and we may lose our data because of failure of that particular systems. So these are all the risks that we'll be facing whenever you are uploading some data into a public cloud environment. So we need to be cautious always that these are the risks that we may be facing whenever you are uploading some sort of data into a cloud environment. Thank you.